Hi, it's sleeves for this tutorial, and we are going to be looking at two very basic and simple sleeves. That's the classic shirt sleeve and the set-in sleeve. Both use different methods. The shirt sleeve is attached using the flat method of sewing, and the set-in sleeve is attached using the round method of sewing. Now the set-in sleeve is set in such a way that it gives some fullness at the top to carry your shoulder pads, etc. And so by the time we are done with this tutorial, you get to know the difference between the two and how to attach it appropriately. Preparing the hem of the sleeve, I'm firming it up a bit, added interfacing, turned it twice, and I'm going to be stitching the edges to firm it up a bit. This is what it will look like, 2 stitches at the hem. So this is the piece for the sleeve, and that is my armhole. We need the measurement of the armhole. I got 8.5 inches for the armhole, so that's what we are going to be using to draft on the sleeve. Now I'm measuring 2.5 inches. That's the length of sleeve, that's the around arm, and that's the armhole area at the top. So from the top downwards, I'm measuring 2.5 inches down, and then I'll rule a straight line. That is where the drafted curve of the armhole will sit. Now I'm going to divide my 8.5 or 9 inches into three portions. So I'm dividing it into 3 portions. 3, 3, 3 will give me 9. So that's the first 3 measured, that's the second 3 measured, and that's the third 3 at the corner. So flat sleeves do not need a high crown head. The head should be shallow. So I come down 1/2 inch and then shape onto the second portion that I have divided. 1/2 inch down, and then shape down onto the second half or the second portion I divided, and then touch the line, and that ends it. So that is my armhole area, and then I go to the hem of the sleeve and measure my around arm measurements and then mark it. When I'm done, I connect the underarm sleeve or the underarm line. So that's my armhole area I have drawn in. Now I'm going to cut out 1 inch for the underarm seam, and then 1/2 inch for the crown of the sleeve or for the armhole area of the sleeve. Once that is done, I'll notch it and then make sure it is balanced with the body, and notch the center. So notched portion matching the shoulder line, and then we go to the machine now. So I'm going to attach it, the 2 right sides facing, right side of sleeve, right side of body, and then I'll stitch from the center, which is the shoulder line, downwards towards the front, and then downwards towards the back. I'm doing the front now from the shoulder line downwards, and then I flip it over and do from the shoulder line downwards towards the back. So this is the reason why it's called a flat sleeve. This is a flat method of attaching your sleeve. You have the work flat, only joined at the shoulder, the body joined at the shoulder. Then you open it up and attach the sleeve. If there's any excess, trim it off at the sides, and then turn it, give it a quick clip, the seam, press it, and then I'll be top stitching it on the right side to make the seam lie flat. This type of top stitching and this type of sleeve is used for shirts, dresses, shirt styles, and kaftan or kimono styles. So I'm using 1/2 inch for the top stitching of the seam onto the body. Turn the seam to the body at the wrong side, and then top stitch it 1/2 inch as a form of decoration. When that is done, I'm going to be closing in the seam now, right from the underarm downwards to the hem of the dress. So balance the underarm first, pin it, and then balance the edge of the sleeve to make sure they align and then you go to the hem of the garment and also balance the hem and make sure it's aligned. And then you use your 1 inch seam allowance and stitch from one end to the other, either from the hem to the sleeve or from the sleeve to the hem. It works both ways. Turn it to the wrong side now, open the seam up and press. This is what it's going to be looking like. I clipped through the underarm seam at that point to give it a smooth curve. So this is what our shirt sleeve is looking like. Onto the satin sleeve now. Length of sleeve and then around arm. Circumference of armhole also needed. It's the same 9 inches we are using. This time, because it's a satin sleeve, the crown of the sleeve will be higher. So I'm using 3.5 inches downwards. 3.5 inches downwards. Rule a straight line and then measure your 9 inches on and then divide your 9 inches into 3. That's it. So 3, 3, 3 will give you 9. For satin sleeve, always remember that the sleeve head should be high. So we are going to use the same method. Start from the top, shape up onto the second portion of the divisions that I have marked on the line. But this time, when we touch base on the line, we'll still go underneath 3/4 of an inch and then curve to the end of the sleeve. So it's going to give you a very high crown. And then my around arm measurements are folded the hem of the sleeve upwards, my hem allowance, and then I mark my around arm measurements and connect to my underarm points. 1 inch underarm seam, 1/2 inch for the crown for cutting. So that's what I'm doing now. Cut it out 1 inch and then 1/2 inch. Always remember to notch the center of your sleeve when you are done cutting, so it will help you to balance when you're ready. So that's what it's looking like. You can see the crown is very high. We are done now. We're going to give it a stitch. The underarm, we'll stitch the underarm first. Make sure the armhole of the dress is smaller than the armhole of the sleeve, the armhole area of the sleeve. Now, to give a correct setting or roundness at the top the way we want, I'm giving it 2 rows of gathering. So I'll pull the fullness in. You can use the easing method, but that's more complicated. The gathering method is beginner friendly. So I'm stitching my 2 rows of gathering. I'm done with that, and then I'm stitching my underarm seam now. I'll press it open and then treat my hem also, stitch it in position or hem it into position. So you can see with this method, the sleeve is prepared separately, the body is prepared separately, and then you bring the two together. Always make sure that the armholes are not equal. The armhole of the dress should be smaller than the armhole area of the sleeve. The sleeve head should always be bigger than the armhole of the body. So the excess there is what we'll use to introduce the fullness at the top. I'm going to pull my gathers now. The gathers should be what we call soft gathers. It should not appear as gathers on the sleeve. It should just introduce fullness at the top, and the fullness should only be at the crown head, at the top part of the sleeve, not all around the sleeve like a puff sleeve. This is not a puff sleeve. So you pull the gather slightly. We are not setting it into the sleeve as a puff sleeve. We just want to introduce so you can see the roundness at the top. You just want to introduce the roundness in. Now fit your sleeve into the body, right sides facing, the right side of the sleeve facing the right side of the body. Balance the sleeve head to the shoulder points, and then underarm seam of the sleeve to the side seam of the body. Those are the 2 places to balance first. Once you pin those places together, you can now ease in the fullness and make sure it appears as fullness and not appear as gathers. So if you see it's too gathered at one area, open it up or space it out a bit, and then stitch around. Give it a permanent stitch around with your real thread. When that is done, we're going to be pulling the gathers out, or pulling the gathering thread. You can see the roundness at the crown of the sleeve. This is the set-in sleeve. This is the method used for the set-in sleeve. Time to remove the gathering thread. Trim the end of the thread at one end and then pull through from the other end. If you use gathering stitches or the widest set of stitch, it should be very easy to pull the gathering thread out. So once that is done, almost half of the job, or we are almost through with the attachment of the sleeve. When that is done, you can give it a second permanent stitch around for reinforcement. So out goes the gathering thread, and there we have it all done. So that's our set-in sleeve. You can see the roundness at the top, and this can easily incorporate a shoulder pad. You know, this method is used for suits. So that's the set-in sleeve. You can see the fullness at the top, and you will see the difference with the flat sleeve. You see how round the top looks. It has a rounded effect for fullness and shoulder pads. And the flip side of it is the shirt sleeve. You can see that it's very flat. It has no fullness at the top. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video. Bye bye.